What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a new Netflix original movie that I was actually very excited to watch. And the reason for that is I am an enormous fan of the original Beverly Hills Cop movie. When I was in middle and high school, I rewatched the first and probably the second movie like 50 times a piece throughout my middle and high school years. I quoted that movie nonstop. I just thought Eddie Murphy was brilliant in that role. It just showcases everything that makes him so special as a comedian and just his comedic timing and the way that he interacts with characters, especially that first Beverly Hills Cop film. It's just so charming, but it's also suspenseful and action packed, and it just combines so many different genres of filmmaking together to create a really entertaining and engaging experience. And I enjoy the second movie a lot. The third one is definitely a drastic downgrade, but I still enjoy watching it just because I like Eddie Murphy in that role. It's not a very good movie by any means, but when this was announced, I was kind of surprised because I know Eddie Murphy recently did the Coming to America sequel, and I know there's a couple of properties he's been revisiting, but Eddie kind of like disappeared off the planet for a while, and he's made a few things over the past couple years, but this is one of those roles that I didn't expect this movie to be anywhere near as good as the original, but I was hopeful that it would still have some of the charm and the entertainment value that the original film and even the second movie had. And I'm really excited to tell you about Beverly Hills Cop Axel F today. Beverly Hills Cop Axel F is directed by Mark Molloy. 40 years after his unforgettable first case in Beverly Hills, Detroit cop Axel Foley returns to do what he does best: solve crimes and cause chaos. So, as I said, I was very excited to watch this movie because I'm a huge fan of the original Beverly Hills Cop. And this movie is very entertaining, albeit incredibly forgettable. I don't think compared to the first two films, this is definitely better in quality than the third movie, but I'm not 100% sure it's even as memorable as the third movie. And that's disappointing. I really liked seeing Eddie Murphy in this role again, and there's definitely some moments that had me cackling, but the story itself is just so run of the mill, by the numbers, predictable that it's hard to really care about anything that's going on other than when Eddie Murphy is really like hamming it up in these comedic moments. I'll talk about it more as I describe the movie as a whole. So in this film, we're reintroduced to Axel Foley, played by Eddie Murphy, and he's at a hockey rink, and there's a robbery going on. He ends up working with this guy to stop this robbery. He's not supposed to be involved in the case. And after all of that takes place, he gets into an argument with his chief at the police headquarters, and they're kind of going back and forth. Well, shortly after, we're introduced to Jane, played by Taylour Paige, who is Axel's daughter, and she is living in California in Beverly Hills, and she is an attorney. She's currently working on this case right now where this man has been convicted of murdering a police officer, and she does not believe that the man who was convicted actually committed the crime. And these people come and show up to her car and tell her, hey, you need to get out of this, otherwise we're going to hurt you. Well, she is not talking to Axel during this time period, but Billy Rosewood, played by Judge Reinhold, still is talking to him, and he's close to Axel's daughter, and so he gives Axel a call and says, hey, you need to get to Beverly Hills immediately. Your daughter's in trouble. And so Axel flies to Beverly Hills, meets up with his daughter, who's reluctant to even speak to him, and the two of them work together to try to figure out if this person actually committed this crime, or are there other police officers in this precinct working together to cover up the crimes of this cop who was murdered. So, as I said, I was really excited to watch this movie, and I thought that it was entertaining, but I think that it's disappointing when it comes to the structure and the quality of the narrative. For starters, for positives, this thing actually looks like a movie, comparatively to a lot of Netflix original films that feel like television shows with a little bit higher of a budget. This movie is actually really well shot. There's a lot of attention to detail in the action sequences and the way that they capture Beverly Hills. Like, I was really impressed. This could have been a theatrical run film and people would have really enjoyed it, I'm assuming, assuming it probably would have made quite a bit of money. And so I'm glad that there was that level of intentionality in the filmmaking, because a lot of times with these Netflix original movies, they just don't look very good. And so I'm glad that there was that attention to detail. Secondly, Eddie Murphy is great in this movie. He is eating up the screen time. There are so many scenes in this movie that were really reminiscent of what made the original Beverly Hills Cop so special, and just the way he chews up scenery and the way that he's able to take a joke and extend on it, but somehow never make it feel stale. Like, even if he's talking about something for 5 or 10 minutes, Eddie just knows how to keep playing back to something while also continuously making it interesting. And that's what I always loved about him as a comedian and as an actor, is that he's always able to hold and keep your attention because he's just a really captivating comedian. And I really thought he did a fantastic job in this movie. I loved every time he was on screen. There were so many moments that I was like, yeah, he's still got it. Like, it's been unfortunate over the years that he hasn't been involved in as much, but like, when you put him in a situation with the right material, he can make it work. And this is just more proof to that. I really enjoyed the incorporation of a lot of the older characters. Judge Reinhold is in this movie, not for very long. Paul Reiser's back in this one. Serge from the original movie is in this movie. So they bring back a lot of characters that, you know, it's like a nostalgia thing. They're like, do you remember this? But it works in this movie. I think like the nostalgia elements, they're not overplayed in a way that's so annoying that it's like, oh, you're just trying to capitalize on this. I feel like it has been so long that I'm able to excuse it in this type of a movie, because it felt like it added some charm and less of just like a, oh, do you remember that? And they actually each played a part in the story, so it wasn't just like a shoehorning something in for a couple of minutes and then running away from it. I also liked a lot of the incorporation of the new characters. I thought Taylour Paige's performance here was fantastic. She's just a really talented actress, and she did a great job with this role. I thought Joseph Gordon-Levitt did a really nice job. Kevin Bacon shows up in this movie, and he's fine. His character's a little bit less interesting, but he gives a solid performance. The big issue I have with this movie, like I said, is the narrative structure and the entire premise of the film. The way this case is introduced, it's very intense, and they drop you into where the danger feels like an all-time high. And then as the movie begins to play out, the danger feels less and less palpable, and you start to care a lot less about the case as a whole. And it becomes much more about the family drama between Axel and his daughter, which is fine, but I feel like there's a way that you can balance both to where the stakes kind of parallel, to where it's less of like you're focusing on one thing and taking away from the other. And there are a lot of sequences in this movie that just feel like filler sequences that don't really add anything to the overall narrative. Like, this movie's pushing 2 hours long. I think it's like an hour and 57 minutes. And in the back of my mind, I was like, this thing could have been an hour and 20 minutes, an hour and a half. It would have been equally as effective. There was just so much of the runtime. I was just sitting there like, yeah, this really isn't providing a whole lot. If anything, it's pulling me out more than it's keeping me involved. And especially a lot of the drama in the film, it feels a little hokey in moments, and it was hard to stay completely and totally invested in a lot of it. But like I said, I think Eddie Murphy is having such a good time here, and there's a lot of fun moments that if you're a fan of the original Beverly Hills Cop, it's definitely worth watching once. But I just don't see myself ever feeling like super inclined to revisit this movie. It's not like the first couple in the franchise where I'm like, oh yeah, I'd sit down and watch those any day of the week. It was like, it was cool to see Eddie Murphy revisit this character again, but outside of one time, I just don't see myself ever watching this movie again. So have you seen Beverly Hills Cop Axel F? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was entertaining, but mediocre. I really liked Eddie Murphy's performance, but the story as a whole isn't all that interesting, but it's still worth watching once if you're a fan of the franchise. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out material and looking forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.